A lot of times I see concern for humanity expressed as concern for people that you've never met. And I think it's kind of interesting that Christ told us to love our neighbor. I think you should focus on what's around you. I think you should try and make your own city, your own community better. There's a lot of good things you can do in the world besides this, but to me, this is number one. This is restoring God's order in your community should be your top priority.
Welcome back to the Catholic Founders Podcast, where we discover how to run your business like a saint. Today, we are speaking with Daniel Francis, the founder of Abel Police, a software company that helps police create their written reports much faster, allowing them to get back onto the streets to keep people safe. He's a convert to the faith who made his first communion roughly a year ago. And today's conversation covers a very wide range of topics, as is usual for me, because I have many different interests. And some of those things include why he's frustrated by the lack of ambition amongst many Catholics, how it's confusing to him that most Catholics overlook the things I have failed to do part of the confession at Mass, and the project he's funding in San Francisco, or that he's leading at least in San Francisco, to build a shrine to a particular individual. I won't say yet. You can have to listen to that. It's at the very end. And then, should we leave our faith at the door, or should we bring our faith to work? We talk a lot about this and other things as well. I will give a bit of context. He and I had a slight disagreement, at least initially, when we talked kind of a pre-show about this principle of faith at work. And I think we came to a really interesting conclusion after a bit of back and forth and some discussion. So I hope you'll find it interesting. If you are one of those people who is more on the camp of, hey, you leave your faith at the door, work is work, this will be a good episode for you. So take a listen. And then if you do know a police officer who is interested in trying out their software, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to them today, as they are helping police do their jobs better and not get burnt out. So a very noble pursuit, at least. And one last thing before we start, if you are not already, be sure to check out The Saintly CEO, our free Monday newsletter that gives you a little bit of practical advice every Monday on how to integrate your faith into your business. All right, enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the show, Daniel. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I was going to ask you before, if you're in LA, but I remember that you're in San Francisco, so you're not witnessing some of the stuff happening down there. That's when we're recording for anybody listening. But yeah, I guess for people unfamiliar, just give a quick intro to yourself and what you're working on.
Yeah, my name's Daniel Francis. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Abel Police. We make AI tools for cops. Our primary product is called Able Writer. It takes police body cam footage and turns it into police reports for them. So, turns out police spend one third of their time writing reports. Huge waste. If you could drive that down to zero, it's like increasing the police force by 50%, which
Wow.
is politically totally unfeasible, but technologically well within our grasp. So that's what we're working on.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating problem to solve. I guess I never was in this space really. My sister works a little bit with the police locally. She's like a community security officer or whatever. But how
Mhm.
did you come across this idea in the first place, like this problem?
So it was actually an experience I had with a friend of mine. She's the victim of domestic violence. I ended up helping her get out, get an apartment. And the turns out restraining orders, I didn't really have a lot of experience with this, but restraining orders are literally just a piece of paper and
Hmm.
it's given to people who usually can't read. And so her husband came over, banging on the door, saying he was going to kill her. And it took the police in Oakland 45 minutes to get there.
Wow.
And I showed up that day, and I was not a really satisfied consumer of police services at that
Mm.
moment. And so I kind of gave the cops some trouble about it, and the officer like immediately slumped, and he was like, "I'm sorry, man. Like we're super understaffed. We've got a shooting this morning." Like, and that's what I found out. Like, I don't know. In my mind, police were always like this kind of monolithic service that just existed and was there immediately when you needed them. And it's actually since 2020, since the riots, it's been really hard to hire cops. There's a national shortage of police and it's driving up response times. People are suffering as a result. People are dying as a result. And so that's when I got interested in policing. I started reading about policing and I read the 2021 staffing analysis for the SFPD, which said that police spend one third of their time writing reports. And I
Wow.
thought, brother, that is bonkers. That's crazy. For something they have body cam footage for, that's nuts. So I thought I could easily fix that. So
Yeah, I like it a lot. It's an interesting reminder that, some of these things that if we just let them decay underneath of us, they will, because there has to be somebody continuing to improve them, right? It's just humanity is effectively in many ways prone to decay, right? Without specific effort. So, no, I like this a lot. I guess, so this is just maybe indicative of people who live in San Francisco, maybe, but do you think that there was something that drew you to kind of being more solutions oriented to just jump in? Because most people would see this and be like, oh, that sucked, like that was a terrible experience, and they just move on with their life. Like, where do you think that this stems from for you? Because I don't know much of your background.
Yeah, I guess I've always been like that. Since I was a kid, I was making little businesses and stuff, and could see a hole to plug. I wanted to figure out how to fix something. It's really satisfying to figure out how to rearrange capital and labor to produce better results. And I guess I, as a kid, I had a kind of a habit of writing letters to companies about how their products were and what was wrong with them and what they could do to
I love it.
improve. And it would be like, yeah, it'd be like General Mills being like, we don't care what you think about the cereal kid. Like, um, but yeah, so,
Did you ever
uh,
get
I,
responses?
oh yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Well, a
really?
lot of times big companies, like big conglomerates, would just send you a response and they would be like, we don't accept any comments. Like literally they would say things like that. I remember I
That's
was really
crazy.
bothered with the packaging for bacon. It really bothered me that bacon was not resealable, even though obviously it would be left in your fridge for
Yeah.
days. And I sent a letter to whoever made the bacon, and it was like some huge company, and they're like, yeah, our bacon division does not currently accept suggestions. And I was like, oh, okay.
That's
Sure.
hilarious,
Okay.
man. I love that. That is good. Man, I'm gonna have to start doing that. I'm gonna teach my kids to do that. My daughter's 7 months. I'm gonna have to teach her how to start sending letters to corporations.
It's satisfying. Sometimes you actually get responses.
Yeah.
I remember when Windows 7 dropped and I emailed Sinofsky, who was I think like the chief architect. I can't remember his first name, but now and I think he left Microsoft a few years ago, but I emailed him and I had a suggestion for how the taskbar should work slightly differently. And he sent me a long email explaining how they did testing on my exact idea and people didn't understand it, and so they abandoned it. I was like, oh,
Mm,
this is so satisfying to get this email from this guy.
yeah.
This is so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people don't take the effort to try to make things better. Like I've sometimes seen new restaurants pop up, and I'll write them a little note to give them suggestions because I want to see them succeed. Right? You don't want to see them just like overlook certain things. But no, that's definitely interesting to hear because it seems as though these kind of things just they are a part of person's being, right? And just try to figure out how they developed it might take a long time, probably beyond the scope of this podcast. But I do want to talk a little bit about the kind of the policing tech before we get too far into the faith stuff. Is have you seen, I guess, any improving of the relationship between, I guess, the public and police force through your technology, or because it's given them more flexibility? Like, have you seen anything along those lines?
Yeah, it's hard for me. I'm very specific when I say something is happening or not. And so it's hard for me to really specifically know. What we do know is that when cops have downtime, it's usually for the best.
Mm,
Uh, you don't want police officers to be going from call to call to call to call to call. Um, you really actually want police officers in a default standby state.
mm,
And a big part of that is because when things go wrong in policing, a lot of times it's an officer that's held over on their shift. They're on a mandatory overtime. They're 14 hours into working. They are, they worked 5 days this week and it's all 12-hour shifts. Like some of these guys work insane hours and it's literally just because of how shorthanded things are. And you can't
mm.
just not have cops. And so a lot of them get mandatoried and a lot of guys burn out as a result, but some guys lose their temper, and that's when you see bad things from police. I think the best situation is a place where police are in a default standby state. They're highly accountable, but they're also highly effective, and that's what we're aiming to do for officers.
Yeah, I guess from a faith perspective, it must be interesting to be able to see that your effectively enabling them to have a better experience in their job, which also affects the public. So, do you have any comments to people, like if you were trying to rally people to work on these types of public services, to build software for these companies, or build, even just a hardware technology for these companies? What would your point to Catholics be to compel them a little bit to work in this space?
Um, I think we live in a fallen and broken world, and that's the result of things that happened long before we were born. But it's incumbent on us to try and restore God's order here on earth. And a big thing that we can do there is restoring. A lot of times I see concern for humanity expressed as concern for people that you've never met. And I think it's kind of interesting that Christ told us to love our neighbor. I think you should focus on what's around you. I think you should try and make your own city, your own community better. And there's a lot of good things you can do in the world besides this, but to me, this is number one. This is restoring God's order in your community should be your top priority.
hmm Yeah, that's something I like a lot, because a while back I heard this talk on the topic of justice, and it was put in a way that made me realize that justice is also due to our communities, to our parishes. Like, we effectively have to tithe because we're getting a service from the church. It's not something you pay for per se, but you should be, giving money to the church so they can sustain their duties, or time to the church as well to keep them, keep it clean and keep it going. So that's an interesting perspective. I think it's something we've fallen away from, and I don't know if it's because the precepts of the church have been reduced to 5 instead of 7, or whatnot. But I think that there's some things that can be done in my opinion. So I really appreciate bringing that up. That's a really astute observation. What generally has the role been of faith in your kind of entrepreneurial journey in general? Like, is God usually, do you learn a lot of things through entrepreneurship from your spiritual life, or vice versa?
They feel compartmentalized to me. And I know we've talked before. Uh, so to me, it's when I think of um, what we're doing here, I don't, I've always felt like it's like a mistake for a running back to think about the philosophy of why he's running in a certain direction. I think when you're playing the game, you just have to run. And so the way that the business runs and operates is I wanted to make sure that I was doing something right from the outset. And I actually talked to my priest about it before I started this company. Well, I was kind of evaluating a few ideas, and he really liked the idea. He's the one that gave me that line about God's order here on earth. And so as long as I believe that the goal that we're doing here makes sense and produces results that glorify God, then I don't think too much about, I guess it doesn't impact the entrepreneurial journey so much. It's like, just don't do anything illegal, but like go out there, build the best company you can, bring capital, labor, and customers together and make all of them better off for the experience and do something that serves the public.
hmm Yeah, I know we had talked about this before, and we kind of have a slightly different perspective on it. But I guess, are there any, it's impossible to have everything completely compartmentalized, right? Because you as an individual are an individual, whether you're at work or at church, right? So have you
Hmm.
had any particular experiences where, I don't, maybe you don't reflect on this much, but have you had any experiences where through the ups and downs or the challenges of entrepreneurship, it maybe brought you closer to God? I'm always curious to explore this idea of leaning into our tendencies as entrepreneurs as a sort of almost like a compass towards following the path that God has charted for us.
Yeah, when you talk about the ups and downs, it definitely drives me closer to God. It definitely is something that, do you know who Paul Scholas is?
No.
His name is his nickname is Lindy Man, and he I don't know if you're familiar with the Lindy effect, but it's the idea that the longer something has gone on, the more likely it is to continue. So
hmm
you know, um, religion is very Lindy. It's and belief in monotheism is very Lindy. Christianity is very Lindy. Gangster rap's not really Lindy. It's much more likely that gangster rap disappears tomorrow than
Mm,
God, right?
yeah.
In our culture. And he has this kind of essay about what's called the 4HL. It basically breaks down your experience in life where you can either live in a stability space or a payoff space. And stability space is that if you take a job as an accountant, an actuary, something like that, It's very predictable. And what you basically are trading your life for is stability. You won't get great payoffs. It won't be like one day there's a huge reward or something big happens. But you also won't probably have terrible calamity happen to you either. And that's sort of like the compromise you make. And then the payoff space is where like a entrepreneur lives. You're taking really high risks. You will have like 16-year-old girl bipolar disorder like swings throughout the day. You'll have a terrible meeting and then awesome news, and it seems like everything's crushing, and then somebody quits, and it's like a nightmare for you all of a sudden. And that's like, and within 24 hours. And I think that experience has definitely brought me closer to God. It's almost like it's gotta. Like
Yeah.
your life is insane in this situation, right? Like you've chosen such an insane path. And I really disagree with the title of the Kanye West song, No Church in the Wild, because I think in the wild is exactly where you find your church. Frontier people exactly knew this. Like, this is like you're out here on the edge and you're in a foxhole basically, and you must believe in God in such a situation.
Hey, everybody, quick interruption. If you're listening to this, you are probably either an entrepreneur now or you will be in the very near future. And if you'd like a peer group of others who are just as ambitious about their faith as they are about their business endeavors, consider becoming a paid supporter of this show. The benefits are that you'll get access to our community group chat, which has a lot of different valuable entrepreneurs in it. We also, that comes along with this is, of course, a directory to all those people so you can reach out to them, maybe ask for some advice, and just perhaps even pursue business endeavors together. And then on top of this, we also host discussions on various topics from time to time. Most recently, we discussed, how to balance the pursuit of financial success and to what extent we should pursue earthly things like sports cars or a bigger house. We actually talked about that a little bit today with Daniel as well. And if you'd like to become part of this group, part of people that you can call your friends who really share these two things in common, become a member of the founding plan today. So we call this the Magis Club. If you go to catholicfounders.com/subscribe, you can choose any paid subscription. The Magis Club is what's going to get you, or the founding plan is what's going to get you into this group chat, get you access to the directory, etc. We do have a cap on this group soon, so if you are interested, sign up now because we will be putting a cap on it pretty soon, just to make sure we get things oiled well before we try to scale beyond that. So if you run a business or about to start one, this is for you. All right, back to the show. hmm Yeah, that's what I find. I mean, for me, I approached my journey of building my company from a perspective initially of like, hey, I felt really specifically kind of kicked off the ledge because I was debating starting my company for a long time, and then it just felt like things lined up, and I had three people in the same day effectively suggest, you should go start your own thing. And I was like, okay, you know what, I'll do it. I find my LLC paperwork, and then later that day, at the time boss was like, hey, we're changing directions with the company. Why don't you do something else? And I was like, I have no interest in doing it. So to me, it was very discerning that God was pushing me off the edge. And I also told myself, hey, listen, if this thing fails, at least I'm going to give it a try, and I'm going to work my hardest. And if it fails, I take it as God didn't want me to do it because I will
Right.
work hard and I will make sure I maintain my faith and my family kind of like the blocks in the calendar so that the needs are met, and then the rest of the time is work. So it's like, I tried to approach it from that perspective because I know that he sometimes gives us really negative circumstances to prepare us for something down the road, as long as we just see it as a gift, right? So I appreciate your take on that. On this idea of doing ambitious things, because what you're doing is in itself ambitious, and being an entrepreneur, especially the kind of entrepreneurs you're doing, like VC-backed startup, it requires a level of ambition. A lot of Catholics I bump into don't seem to have that sort of ambition to build big things. I don't know where it comes from. It could have something to do with this stability versus chaos lifestyle that they may be raised in. But what is your take on how Catholics should approach ambition?
Yeah, that actually bothers me a lot. Um, One thing I like, and so I'm a convert, by the way. I
Mhm.
I converted last year was my first communion Easter of last year, and it was I was probably going to church a year before that, so I consider myself about 2 years a Catholic. And one thing I liked when I was raised Protestant, I was raised Southern Baptist, like really conservative Southern Baptist, And one thing I knew growing up is that the Catholics had a lot of things that they just memorized and they had to repeat, and there was a lot of process and all that and ritual. And I kind of thought it was cool when I was a kid. I thought it was lame that we didn't have any, special hand signals or anything like that that the Catholics had. Um, but one thing I liked when I started going to Mass was this idea during our mission of sins was that for the for what I have done and for what I have failed to do. And everyone, almost universally, in the Catholic sphere that I see, only focuses on what they've done and almost never focuses on what they failed to do. It's insane to me. It's the biggest glaring thing. One of my favorite parables is the parable of the talents. And if I have talents, if I have things that about me that can produce value for God and value for my fellow man, and I bury it, I think that's a terrible sin. And from that teaching, I that seems obvious to me. That seems like an obvious message. I would love to see more Catholics awaken to the fact that they need to do something excellent. That Catholicism should be associated with doing things that are excellent. I feel like Mormons are killing us on this. I feel like there's a lot of Protestants that are killing us on this, which is so funny to me because to me, Catholicism is so much about ritual, it's so much about action, and that's how we express our faith. That our ritual is our worship, and I don't see outside of the church doors, a lot of that energy being put to doing things. It's incumbent on you to do something. Now you must do something. You must build something to make things better and build an edifice, build a large thing that you can say God is part of. God made this. That's important for Catholics, I think, and I agree. I don't see enough of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've had some people try to convince me that the parable of the talents is only in relation to spiritual things, and I'm like, dude, that's like as hardcore as it gets. It's literally talking about money. So I try not to be too harsh with people, but I very much agree with you on that perspective. I just really wonder where this came from because I'm not super well researched on this, but from what I have understood that Catholics used to be much more entrepreneurial. We used to kind of all have our own, artisan shops. It wasn't like big business per se, but there was a lot of small business activity going on. And that's the way that you fund building churches. Like if you think about all of the massive churches that were built, probably a lot of it wasn't necessarily built with donations per se, but with people actually donating their time or their skills and obviously some donations. But the whole point is people did things and they had these grand ambitions. And I just wonder where we're going to get that from because if we can't as Catholics help set the bar for what we should be striving for as a society, then who else is going to, right? We see like Mark Andreessen and some of these guys talking about trying to build what's the verbiage that they use again? The uh basically like this golden age of America. And
Mhm.
I just don't want them setting the vision. I'd rather have people who are, faithful, really, really close to God, kind of setting that objective, right? So on this topic of success and finances, what is a way that you think a decamillionaire or somebody with substantial amounts of money could make a really big impact and influence on the culture? It doesn't have to be the best way, just one way that you think would be amazing. If you had, $20 million to spend on something, what would you do to try to impact the culture and bring it closer to God?
I have no idea.
No?
I don't know. I think that the production company behind it's involved. I think this guy is runs the Federalist Society. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Mm-mm.
And he's also part of the production company that makes the TV show David. Um, it's basically he got a bunch of money from a donor to basically make the culture more Christian, and he's basically doing whatever he can to in incredibly effective ways. I think that it's not easy to know the answer to this, and thinking that it is missing a big part of the problem. And I think so. One thing I've always liked about the Gates Foundation was they had a very like, okay, there's the problem of like malaria and all this stuff, let's actually like sit down and take seriously that it's not easy to know how to fix these things because you can go drop a bunch of wells in the middle of Africa and a year later they've all broken down and nobody uses them and they're in the same situation. Uh, and so things that look good necessarily aren't actually the best solutions. I think there are people working on those specific kinds of problems, and I would love to be a decamillionaire and spend more time thinking about it. I, but I definitely think there's a lot of money on the ground in terms of cultural impact. I think making high quality, The Chosen, David, stuff like this, making high quality media that's not necessarily like Protestants aren't, having been raised Protestant, they aren't very artful usually about their art. Uh,
Well,
usually it's
they don't want to be idol worshippers, right?
yeah, and then when they make stuff, VeggieTales being the only exception,
True.
it's not at all orthogonal, so it's not interesting, right? It's
Mm,
usually just really obvious, right? Here's what you must do, or you must burn in hell. And I think building things or creating things that just show people the beauty of the literature and stories of Christianity are huge, huge. That's so beneficial. I think that's a huge space to grow, and I definitely think a lot of the stuff on the legal front, things have gotten worse and things have gotten better. Obviously, there's been some real legal wins. There's also been one of my favorite things now is that Pornhub basically can't operate in like over a dozen states. That's awesome.
mhm.
Uh, Stuff like that. There's also been some real losses. Gambling has taken over the country. I think that's a terrible situation that nobody's talking about. We're just legalizing this willy-nilly. Um, so I think there's definitely battles to fight there, and but those take time. The Federalist
Mhm.
Society has taken time, right? It's taken decades to really build that into a powerful originator of legal talent that has helped push some of these I think, more reasonable perspectives. But yeah, there's a lot of things to do. I also just really love Catholic art. It's just every time I go to a lot of churches. I'm not, for a long time, it's funny because a lot of atheists are like, oh man, I wish there was some kind of place where the community of a church was available to me, right? Because it's just, we don't have it. And I became very devoutly Christian and would go to a different mass at a different church every week. And then when it's talk to anyone, I just love going to mass. I just love the Eucharist. And but now so I've been in lots of churches. It's usually just based on where I am in the city at that moment. But I so many times I see so much beautiful art that needs to be restored, so much work that could be done, so much architecture that could be built up again. I would investing in the physical infrastructure of the church would be an exciting project to me.
Mm. Yeah, I just wonder if there's a way. I try to think about this sometimes too because I believe that we all can have an impact even if we're not deca millionaires, even if we're just somebody making working a 9 to 5 and making 100 grand a year. I think there's a lot of impact that we can have. We just have to be looking for it. Similar to what you mentioned before, that we have to focus on our communities around us. Right? There's going to be ways that we can affect other people around us in a small way, which doesn't feel as cool because you don't get as much kudos for it, but it is the way it's kind of like the little way like of Teresa of Lisieux, right, about just doing great little things with great love. So I like to think about this too. I also like to think about the idea of how we've already touched on this a little bit, how we can get other Catholics to recognize the opportunity we have, because there is a certain um, swing to the right in this country culturally, and I worry a lot that it's just going to go so far and be more of the secular type of right shift rather than bringing the faith and reason and truth into what we're doing here. Right? This is not just about
Yeah,
being based for the sake of being based. Right?
yeah.
Um, so no, I
I,
appreciate your
I,
perspective here.
I think we've had a great tragedy right now, which is the people in the 90s who were on the left hated the religious right. And the thing that's much more, and there were some excesses, but the thing that was much more horrifying is the right without Christianity. A
Hmm.
godless right wing is savors cruelty. I see regular expressions that are uh, people who are genuinely serious about, hurting trans people, about hurting gay people, about hurting immigrants. And it's troubling to me in a way that it doesn't resonate to me at all as someone who grew up in a conservative household in the 90s and knew what the culture war was like then. Right now, I think that, and then the pendulum's definitely going to swing way too far.
Yep.
Right wing is definitely going to overplay its hand, and it's not going to be terribly pleasant to watch. So I think, well, I'm glad to see that baptisms and confirmations are up in the church. I'm
Yeah.
glad that it's having, I think that the same thing that's driving a rightward swing is also driving the church up. And I hope that Christians assert themselves more
Hmm.
in this space and not in a way that's purely sycophantic to Trump. Even if he does align with many goals, I get that, but still um, keeping God first in their minds.
Yeah. I think this is the difficulty of Americans, especially because we're just so proud of America in many cases that we very much fall for the Americanism heresy, right? Which is like country over God, and that's
Hmm.
definitely not okay. It's interesting what's happening here. I don't know. I really wish we could just take the what is it, the energy or the interest of Silicon Valley people to just do things and to insert themselves into the culture in a way, and to just get that DNA into every Catholic in the world, and we'd be set. But it's obviously not going to happen. So we'll see what we can do about it. It was really fun talking to Will about this because he believes that a lot of this is going to continue to spread across this mentality of Catholics building things will spread, and we do have past data that anything that happens in San Francisco usually ends up kind of spreading across the country. So hopefully it'll be a good 10 years. Um, what do you think about leaving your faith at the door at work? I mean, obviously you're a business owner. It seems like you started this before you became Catholic, so maybe there was a difference in opinion before you began. But how do you approach that? How if you are still Catholic when you're at work, which you are, how do you approach leaving your quote unquote leaving your faith at the door?
Yeah, we talked about, and I know some people incorporate that their faith into every aspect of their business, and they're opening business meetings with prayers and stuff like that. That stuff seems nuts to me. I'll be honest. It's fine if it's fine for them, but to me, um, when you're driving a car, focus on driving a car. It's my job is to like choose this mission, this goal, and pursue it fully. I'd rather do, one thing whole ass than two things half ass. I want to, and I don't know if you're gonna edit that out, but
Nah, we
I,
can leave it.
okay.
I mean,
But
the
to me,
word
I
"ass" is
really,
in the Bible, so we're good.
yeah. That's um, but to me, to see, uh, it's you need to be focused on winning. Like if you just by I'm not noble for starting a company, even if it's got a noble end. Nobody cares. Doesn't matter. If the company collapses, then you were better off not doing that. I really believe that it's super important for us to run a very profitable, very powerful company that spreads throughout policing and radically alters U.S. cities. That's our goal. And if I have to hire Hindu engineers, fine. And we're going to run a company that's effective at doing that goal. And we're not going to start out any of our meetings with prayers. Um, I have I have a Catholic engineer, and we talk about it sometimes. But usually it's more like just see what the Pope said kind of things. Um, and here we're working on policing, absolutely.
Mhm.
Now there is maybe it's easy for me to compartmentalize. I've set my life up so that every morning I go to mass. I go gym, mass, and then work. And having set myself up like that, it makes it easy for me to, I think, get what I need in the proper venue and then come here and focus on what I'm supposed to focus on here. But I think that given that our mission is one that I believe honors God, it is a disservice to do anything but focus on our mission here.
Mhm. So this is interesting. I have been, I guess, maybe per let's say changing my opinion or adjusting my opinion slightly, because recently on the last episode, Marcellino mentioned this idea that a lot of times Catholics in business over spiritualize everything, and he gave an example that some people who are just incredible business people will just feel inspired to do something and blow tons of capital into something without confirming that there's even a need or seeing if somebody else has already solved the problem. And it is interesting to think that maybe we should just be a little bit less in the clouds with this, if you will. So I appreciate that perspective. I think more than when we first talked. When we first talked, I was like, man, this guy, he's got to deepen his faith a bit more. But now I guess I'm coming around to a little bit more of like a an interim view.
I'm winning.
I will say this though, like, I would recommend checking out for anybody who's not the Catechism paragraph 900 about since like the all faithful lay Christians are entrusted by God with the with the apostolate by virtue of their baptism and confirmation. They have the right and duty individually or grouped in associations to work so that the divine message of salvation can be known and accepted by all men throughout the earth. This duty is the more pressing when it's only through them that men can hear their gospel and know Christ. Their activity in ecclesiastical communities is so necessary that, for the most part, the apostolate of the pastors cannot be fully effective without it. So, in essence, like at work, if you're never going to see a priest at work, maybe you should consider bringing the faith there in some way, but not necessarily like, hey, by the way, guys, who's not Catholic here, raise your hand. Like more so like if somebody approaches you and you can tell that they're going through an issue, you can bring the faith into the picture if it makes sense, right? I know there's different ways of running companies, but I have heard from some individuals that, having a crucifix in their office or something ended up leading to some good conversations because people were going through a hard time in their life and they came to that person because they were like, hey, this guy's got some faith, let me talk to him, right? So those are the kind of things I try to promote without saying, hey, we're going to pray before every meeting.
I find that paragraph so interesting. The idea that, I mean, okay, so if we can discuss it,
Yeah.
the so where the clergy cannot be, right? It's our duty. But I am in many places on a regular basis where the clergy can be, and I've never heard them bring it up. I'm at the post office, I'm at gas stations, I'm at all kinds of places where I assume clergy come through, and I don't know them to be constantly haranguing people and constantly bringing this up. I've gone out to lunch with my priest, and he didn't try and proselytize to the employees, etc. I don't know why it's my responsibility when I certainly don't see him doing it all the
Hmm.
time. I think at certain times we're in a certain transaction, and that's fine. It's fine to do these things. One thing that I do like is the idea of having a crucifix around. Usually, and it's not here right now, but usually I have my rosary out here on the
Hmm.
table, and it's just something I like to grip while I'm working and stuff like that. So I'm not. All my employees know that I'm Catholic. But I also at the same time don't see a need, and I don't think it.
You
I
don't want to be trying to like slap you over the head. And this is the point that I would always make is it's again not trying to insert yourself intentionally, more so when you perceive that there's an opportunity or you feel compelled that maybe the spirit is asking you to mention something to this person because they brought it up or because they came to you because you've got your rosary, or I have a friend who wears the miraculous medal at all times. Like it's very visible, it's huge, it's awesome. He wears his on the outside at all times, right? So it's
I
like
wear it outside a
those
lot.
those things end up leading to discussions. And what I really mean by this is more so being willing to bring it to work and not necessarily to hide it, right?
Yes.
Because I was at one point I was in a role where most of the clients we serve were very much towards the left, right? This just happened to be how it was. And I was always nervous that I had to be a little quiet about everything because, like, if people found out my beliefs, maybe they went on to work with me or whatever. But there were times where people would ask me something like, "Oh, why didn't you and your girlfriend just move in together?" I was like, "Well, and I had an opportunity to talk about the Catholic perspective on it, and I don't regret that, and I think that was the right thing to do." So those are the kind of things I mean. It's not so much like because you're the founder saying, "Hey guys, we're gonna do prayer before meeting," even if not everybody's Catholic, right? It so
Yes,
happens
I
that my
absolutely
company,
agree with that.
yeah, yeah. Is that I was just gonna say, it so happens that the people I've hired so far are all Catholic, so we pray before meetings. If it
Just
became
so happens.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's why, and I kind of, again, I'm not saying I need to keep it this way, but I really enjoy it. Like I really enjoy being able to have
Mhm.
all of the aspects covered. And again, not to say I wouldn't want somebody to work here who's not Catholic, but it's just very nice to be able to not have to separate them from me. But you're in
Oh
a very
yeah,
different
absolutely.
situation, right?
I can
Um,
imagine that absolutely. Um, I do like I do often. I honestly, it feels like overkill to be on the Catholic podcast and have my miraculous medal out. But oftentimes it's like, okay, we get it. But a lot of times I have it out. For a long time, I would wear a rosary around my neck and I'd have it out, and it's because I do like gripping it and touching it. And I really like the idea that I genuinely don't care if like I'm allowed to exist in my own beliefs.
Yeah,
I'm not ashamed of that. And I'm allowed to take up space with this. And I live in San Francisco. A lot of people have a lot of beliefs that they put on their body and put on their clothing. And I'm the same way, and I have no problem with that. And at one point, we had a consultant. We have a consultant. He's our closest advisor. And he was like, probably the beads look a little hippie during calls with cops. And I was like, okay, I get
yeah,
that.
exactly.
Appearing a little bit hippie, but I've never been ashamed of it.
Yeah,
And I think it's good. It's not only good for your faith, but it's good for you and your own personal psychology
yep,
to assert yourself and your personal existence into the world in this way, I think.
yeah. Especially because it's truth, right? And this is the thing I always find difficult when I would suppress my, my opinions. Basically, I would just feel like, oh man, like if I'm willing to do this, then what else would I be willing to do, right? Because if it is truth and if I truly believe it, why am I afraid of it at all? Because even if there are consequences, shouldn't I be willing to suffer them, right? And so it seems like my point of keeping the faith at work. It seems like you are doing it, just not the same way that we originally thought. So we're on the same page there. Okay, let's talk about this idea of financial success. So a lot of the Catholics I've met who are building tech companies in San Francisco, especially, they want to achieve a certain outcome, selling their company, making a lot of money. And we recently had a call with the Catholic Founders Guild about this, talking about what level of financial kind of lifestyle is okay. People are like, oh, if I have enough money to buy a bigger house, should I buy a Ferrari, whatever. How do you approach, I guess, this idea of pursuing financial success, or is that not really the thing that you focus on? It's like, hey, that'll be an outcome if it works.
Yeah, I've been remarkably unconcerned with money for most of my life, and it's because I happened to fall in love with mathematics when I was an undergraduate and got a math degree, and it just kind of led me into jobs where it was just like, here's $100,000, and you're not very old, and that's like I was like, oh, like literally, went from like splitting the $600 rent with a friend of mine when I moved out of my parents' house the day I turned 18 to like not worry, never looking at bills and restaurants. That's my favorite thing is just be at a level of existence where I don't worry how much food costs. And that's all I ever cared about. And I achieved that at a reasonable age, which it's not hard to do if you work in software. And so like off the bat, I kind of was like, I don't know. And I knew guys, I knew there's a lot of guys out here, a lot of people out here, who really get obsessed with like climbing up the L ladder at Google and like, they feel terrible if they have 600K total comp and their friend just got bumped up to 740 and they feel like a loser. And I just never really cared about it. Uh, my only thing is anxiety. I need to care.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, you're in your 30s now. You should probably actually start worrying about this kind of thing. So, um, but I don't think that I'm necessarily gonna like have a radically better outcome if I'm obsessed with it. And so what I really like is making the company rich.
Mhm.
I have something that I think is like kind of, I guess, weird among startup founders. I think it's amazing that people we raised $5 million, and over 1 million of that was when I was in my boxers in my living room just writing code. And it was just like really early investors. Cyan Bannister was a wonderful angel to me, and saw what I was doing and was like, yes, absolutely. Like, she has they have a slogan there. They always want to be the second believer, and absolutely and I view that relationship as pretty sacred. I think it's amazing that someone gave me capital as a guy in his boxers in the living room coding an app. And so I feel like it's my duty to make this thing as big as possible and not like just like big, but like really, really big. Like we need to be massively successful. And so given that that's my duty, that's what I'm really interested in. that will cure my latent anxieties about my own personal financial life. But honestly, I enjoy working so much.
Mhm.
I could work into old age. Um, I do like certain things, but hey, what do I even like? I just like having a nice apartment. But besides that, I drive like kind of a beat up Mazda. Like I don't really care about most stuff.
Yeah,
So yeah. The other thing that I would really like is to feel like I could really light up some churches.
yeah.
That would be an extremely satisfying thing to me.
Mhm.
I've had a taste of that. We so a project that I engaged in that we're currently in the process of, it got pushed back a little bit because the death of Pope Francis. But the at Star of the Sea here in San Francisco, where I'm a parishioner, I approached the priest there about Carlo Acutis.
Mhm.
Um, I had started praying for intercession from Carlo for technical problems. There's kind of a lot of talk about Carlo Acutis as a millennial saint. I find that to be the least interesting thing about him. The most interesting thing is that he wrote code. That I find I like that a lot. And so we had a patron saint of computer programmers, Saint Isidore of Seville, back in the 90s. The Catholic Church saw the early internet, and they're like, "Oh, this is kind of like the etymology from Isidore Savell, so we'll make him the patron saint of computer programmers." It was kind of a sort of a fit, but Carlo's
Very
a
close.
fit,
Yeah.
and so every week now I pray for intercession at Carlo, and I list out hot tickets that we're working on. I really started this when I was migrating us to Kubernetes. And if anyone is listening to this and is a programmer, they'll understand that your first Kubernetes stand up will really make you pray in a deep way. But I just made it a weekly habit. And we are getting a shrine built at Star of the Sea, and Father Ilo and I have worked on having a prayer of intercession for technical challenges, and we'll have a plaque there so people can come pray for their technical challenges, for their programming challenges. I think it's incumbent on the church to reach out to the community in which it exists on terms that the community can understand. And I think that a lot of people will come pray for the first time when they start trying to set up Kubernetes.
Yeah.
So projects like this has given me the first taste. We had to raise $15,000, and luckily there's a few Catholic VCs who were like, "Oh yeah, definitely." So we raised that money, but I really enjoy putting money into Catholic things like this. I can see this being a long-term interest for me.
Mhm.
Is if there's some kind of cool project, some kind of artistic project, some kind of a unique take, I would really love to spend money on that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a really great example. No, I'm definitely a fan of Blessed Carlos. Or I got some pins from I forget her name, Teresa something. She has this Saint Sprites company. She makes like pins for him. I'll have to bring one to you when I
Hmm,
come to San Francisco. But
definitely.
no, that's a really great story, man. I appreciate that. Cool. Well, I think we're running up on time here, so let's just end with a couple rapid fire things. You mentioned a couple already, but are there any specific scriptures or I guess reading materials that you've had that really inspire you from an entrepreneurial standpoint?
The story of the Pentecost, of course, the Sunday was Pentecost Sunday. I love the story of the Pentecost. My baptismal name was Peter. I love Peter. Peter was a total moron, and then the Pentecost happened, and he became like a titan. I find that to be a deeply inspiring story, and I think that once you find something in your life that you should be working on, it will have the same effect to you. It will align your spiritual interests, your interest in helping others, and your abilities, and you will suddenly feel like you're walking through the temple healing people. So that to me is an entrepreneurial story. Of course, Paul was a great manager of communities and people. So I take a lot of HR advice from Paul, and the story of the talents definitely is like kind of a guiding story to me.
Okay, great. And then are there any particular entrepreneurs that genuinely inspire you and why?
Steve Jobs. I really love Steve. Steve was a deeply flawed human being. I first off, I love human beings that are flawed. I don't dislike sinners. I really like it. And he knew that he was deeply flawed. He knew he was poorly made. And I, at the same time, his ability, there's something about, in the same way that I feel like really wonderful art brings something divine into people's lives. I think that really beautiful products are the same way. And they show a sort of excellence and a supreme value. They shouldn't be confused for the supreme value. They're more like to me, a hand that is pointing. But um, to see that kind of beauty and to bring that kind of beauty into the world, that's ultimately my goal. We are in an industry where all the software is really ugly and nobody cares. And so that to me is really valuable because then I can bring a light to a place that is very dark in that way. So Steve Jobs, not a Christian at all, very inspiring to me regardless.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, did you ever meet him?
Oh no, no.
No.
Let's see. I came out here in 2018. He died
Okay.
in 2011.
Fortunate.
Never had a
Okay. Yeah.
chance.
Yeah. I wasn't curious because you talk about him like you must definitely have read a lot of his stuff. I definitely like Steve Jobs
A
as well. I've
lot.
got a big poster up there. Nobody can see that.
Nice.
But and then what are your you already mentioned your favorite saints, I think. Peter and Paul are those some of your favorites besides Blessed Carlo?
Yeah. It's funny because cradle Catholics have great knowledge of saints because a lot of them go to Catholic school.
Hmm.
And when I was a kid, if you believed in saints, you're going to hell. That was the Southern Baptist way, brother. And so I don't know a ton of saints, and I learn about new saints all the time. And uh, like Saint Teresa and um, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, obviously Peter and Paul, I have a deep appreciation for the most. And of course, I ended up reading a decent amount about Saint Isidore of Seville, also an excellent character. Turns out all the saints were excellent people. So it's an incredible selection mechanism. If you want to read about an incredible person, read stories of the saints, and it turns
Yeah.
out it seems 100% they're all great.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely the early church, the Acts of the Apostles, besides obviously the Gospels, but the Acts is my favorite book because it's, I don't know, it's like a rock album to me. It's insane, the energy of the early church, how nuts things were. You should try and embody that and build that in your own life, definitely. And everyone who was involved, I think, was incredible.
Yeah. I find it really hard that people can't just get so jazzed when they read this stuff. Like it just the early church days. Like, how can you not recognize that they were on fire for the faith? Literally, they went out and they knew they were going to get, killed for doing this eventually. They just did it. Like they knew that this was true and it was so important and so consequential that they had to go out and tell people. So, um, yeah, I definitely I share the sentiment, man. I've read that book the most so far.
Same.
Very cool, man. Well, it's really been a pleasure having you on. Is there anything else you want to leave the audience with? Otherwise, this has been a great show.
No, I hope everyone goes out and does something really well.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
See ya.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, leave a 5-star review on your favorite podcast player. And if you are not already, give us a follow on YouTube. It really, really helps us because we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Once we do that, we can become monetized and then help make some money to help keep funding this. So if you're not a paid member, do us a favor. Subscribe on YouTube. It'll help us become paid without you having to do anything other than clicking a couple buttons. Beep, beep, boop, right? Just like that. All right. Also be sure to subscribe to The Saintly CEO is our weekly newsletter that comes out every Monday at 7 a.m. Unless, of course, I'm feeling a little lazy. Maybe it comes out later. It is a great thing that gives you a little bit of advice or tactical ways that you can implement the faith into your business in under 1,000 words. We also have a section called The Heavenly Hustlers with a number of other Catholic entrepreneurs just for you to discover other people. Again, we do this through the peer group, but also you should check it out because it's free, right? This is a free way to learn about other Catholic entrepreneurs around the country. And then finally, again, if you are looking to find a real peer group of Catholic entrepreneurs, become a member of the Catholic Founders paid subscription. Just go to CatholicFounders.com/subscribe, choose any paid tier, and you'll get access to all of our paid content, to our group chat, and to our directory as well. Again, we are going to be capping this very soon and making it so that only Maggie's Club subscribers can get access to the group chat. So if you're interested, I would recommend signing up now because pretty soon the game is going to be over. All right. Very good. Thank you so much. God bless. And we will see you next time on Catholic Founders.